Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City Council study session meeting of Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. I now call the meeting to order. If everybody can now please stand and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance together. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Could you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Pettis.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Gameros.
Here.
Councilmember Bewley. Councilmember Marr is planning to join us remotely, but in a short while.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Here.
Mayor Stevens.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have one study session item tonight, and I'm just looking at this agenda. So, Madam Clerk, are we going to do the
Presentation first.
We're going to do the presentation, then have public comment, or public comment, then the presentation?
Presentation first, please, Mr. Mayor.
Presentation, then the public comment. Okay, sounds good. So we're going to do the presentation by our staff, and then if you have public comment, everybody get 2 minutes. You could just speak on the item that's been presented. And if there's not that many speakers, we'll bump it up to 3 minutes, if anybody wants to go 3 minutes. So with that, could you please read the title?
Yes, Facilities Master Plan for City-Owned Facilities Presentation. Presentation by Mr. Seth Rahman, Public Works Director.
Okay, well done. And this is for the purpose of people watching and people participating. You're free to use first names. You were free to dress a little bit more informally. I took advantage of that to a certain extent. Some people have dressed up, but you have the freedom to dress. You don't have to. It's what it's all about, right? So, Mr. Seth, oh wait, you want to, Raja? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City Manager, staff, and our community, we're here to present to you our initial presentation on the Facilities Master Plan. Just want to point out that this is the first time in my career with the city that we are doing something like this, looking at all our facilities and looking at the needs of our facilities and coming up with a plan down the road for how we want to address ongoing maintenance needs as well as future needs of the city. To assist in this process, we recruited Gensler Associates. They'll be making the presentation briefly, led by Mike Atkins. He's on the staff table on the other side. And his team will do the presentation, bulk of the presentation. From the city side, in addition to myself, we have Patrick Bauer, our Deputy Public Works Director, who was intimately involved with the project as a project manager, as well as from Public Works, we have Ryan Wilson. He's in the audience as an assistant engineer. We also have support from Alma Reyes. She was one of the integral part of our working team during this process. With that, I'll have Mike Atkins introduce his team, and then we'll start the presentation, and then I'll have some close-up remarks, and then we can take questions. Mike?
Mike, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Stevens, members of the council, thank you for your time this evening. My name is Mike Atkins with Gensler. I'm joined by Kevin Rosenstein, who's in the audience today, and also by Shu-En Kui, who's to my right here. But also from Bureau Veritas. We partner with Bureau Veritas, our long-term partners who conduct facilities engineering, conditions assessments. I'm joined by Aspen from Bureau Veritas today. So just want to run through the agenda of the items that we're going to cover. We're going to briefly talk about the project introduction and what the purpose is and what our goals were on the outset of the project. We're going to review with you the facilities master plan overview, what we did cover, what we did not cover briefly, so you have a better understanding of what elements that we took a look at. And next, we'll talk about the facilities evaluation. This is the evaluation criteria we developed to ensure that there was an even and holistic scoring process used across all facilities to make sure that we looked at them in an equitable way. And then we'll talk about our key findings. What are the main things that we learned about the facilities conditions today? Next, we're going to take a quick look at future planning options. What does all of this mean? What does it mean when we do a facilities conditions assessment? What do all these numbers really mean to you, and what does that look like for your future needs? And then finally, we'll conclude with next steps. So the project purpose was really for us to take a look at the conducting and completing a facilities master plan. We want to ensure that this facility master plan will improve program and service efficiencies, streamline workflows, and position the city to become an effective municipal administration. It's important to know that we did not just look at facilities conditions, but we also wanted to understand implications. We did a lot of qualitative and quantitative data gathering to help really inform our framework of how we conducted the evaluation. So we conducted a process of evaluating, assessing, analyzing, and creating. And that's our process that we took with your facilities with the city of Costa Mesa. Understand the current conditions, assess their abilities to meet the needs of current services, plus anticipated growth for the city for the future. We wanted to understand what are those gaps, where we see any gaps in that service delivery or any facilities portfolio needs. And then finally, create an action plan to address those deficiencies, those gaps. Just briefly with our project history and project methodology, we began actually about a year ago with our first on-site meetings with the project team. That's where we conducted qualitative data gathering with department surveys and department questionnaires. Also, Bureau Veritas hit the ground at 20 facilities within your portfolio to start to collect facilities conditions assessments. We had a next phase that ran roughly from June to December of past 25 to 26, where we looked at really understanding the future growth and needs of the city, not just looking at the facilities conditions evaluation, but what are the growth opportunities, what are the growth potentials of the city, and how does that impact the analysis and findings? And then finally, developing an implementation plan and an action plan. So at the outset of our project, we really wanted to ensure that the lens at which we were going through this process with the city was in alignment with your city council goals. We wanted to make sure that we were incorporating your goals and priorities into the way that we evaluated our data. And so you'll see here the items in the blue boxes and the bold text. Those are your city council goals from the website, from your website, which you've established as your strategic goals. We took that and understood how we could fold that into facilities master plan goals to ensure that when you have a priority of recruiting and retaining high quality staff, we wanted to make sure that we looked at the potential improvements for providing safe and modern functional workplaces to enhance employee experiences. For example, the strength in public safety and improve quality of life, we looked at opportunities to ensure equitable service access and delivery throughout the city and the growing areas. We also wanted to make sure that we were taking opportunities to optimize existing facilities and have strategic future new investments. We wanted to align facilities investments with long-term housing needs, and especially in those areas of community growth. Also to develop an implementable and data-informed improvement strategies to make sure that these were actionable and realistic goals. And lastly, to integrate low-impact design, energy efficiency, and climate resiliency across all facilities to ensure that we're meeting and advancing your environmental sustainability and client resiliency goals. Okay, briefly for our facility master plan scope. We had included in the scope 20 facilities, not every facility that you own, but 20 different facilities that are approximately 326,000 square feet. And you can see the different types of facilities breakdown. Of those 326,000 square feet, approximately 38% were public safety facilities. That's the largest breakout. Those are listed in the blue column: fire stations, police facility, and the police substation. The office facilities incorporated about 23% of that portfolio we looked at: City Hall, Communication Center, and the Airport Loop office, which you lease. The community facilities and infrastructure facilities are also incorporated into that at 26% and 13%. The facilities that were included were the Donald Duggan Library, Norma Herzog Community Center, Communication Center, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Golf Course Clubhouse. The map is simply just a reference for you to see which facilities we did incorporate into this study. So next, we're going to shift over to the facilities evaluation. This is where we established an evaluation criteria for equitable analysis across all your facilities. And Shu-Wen is going to walk us through that.
Thank you, Mike. So part of our project goal is to assess facility conditions and evaluate whether the facility can meet not only your current, but also future needs. So throughout the study, we've gathered data from multiple sources. So Bureau Veritas did facility conditions assessment, focusing on the physical condition of the facilities. So they were looking for systems due for repair and replacement, and at the same time, Gensler, our team, held multiple interviews with the department focusing on the perspectives from the users. So how the facilities support their operations, where there might be limit, what are some changes of their needs in the future. So to bring all of those information together and be able to evaluate facilities consistently, we developed this facility evaluation matrix, which looks at all the facilities through these 3 different lenses. So the first one is asset health, which includes effective building age and the facility condition index determined through the facility conditions assessment. Second, functional performance covers space adequacy, operational functionality, and compliance concerns, including ADA or life safety issues that may present a higher risk. Strategic alignment looks at how facilities support citywide goals, including location and access to services, sustainability, and resiliency. We believe that by looking at all the 7 factors together, it can provide us a complete picture to see how the facility is performing and help us identify gaps and opportunities. So after each category is scored, the results are weighted and combined into the final score. So asset health accounts for about 45%, functional performance is 35%, and the strategic alignment is about 20% of the final score. And then if a facility has significant compliance or life safety concerns, a penalty factor is applied to reflect the urgency of those issues. So this is a detailed page of how we apply all the scoring, but essentially all the categories are rated on a 1 to 4 scale. So it's 4 meaning strong performance and 1 meaning some significant challenges. So this table is showing the final results by facility ranked by their final score. You can see here several facilities, including Fire Station 3 and 4, and Westside Substation is showing some challenges compared to others. So when you look at the table, we wanted to emphasize that this is not a priority list. The scores is trying to provide a consistent framework when we're trying to compare the facilities, and of course it is up to the city to have the final decisions on what project to prioritize based on the funding availability, strategic opportunities, and other considerations. But this is the results of our evaluation. And we know that Bureau Veritas facility condition assessment is a key component of this evaluation. We've provided individual reports for each facility, which has detailed maintenance inventory and cost estimates over the next 20 years. So these are just snippets from the City Hall reports, which I won't go through them in detail, but in the next key findings section, Aspen will spend some time walk through some of the findings on the summaries.
Thanks, Shu-Wen. Now we're going to cover our key findings section, where we'll discuss some of the high-level key findings of what those as it impacts or as is reflected by the current conditions of the facilities. The key findings, we followed a structure of the same type of assessment matrix that we developed for scoring. We have key findings that relate to your asset health, key findings for the functional performance, and key findings for strategic alignment. These are the three primary categories that we use to understand and evaluate your conditions at each of your facilities within your portfolio, but also using the same structure helped us to make sure that we were really directly addressing some of those key challenges or opportunities that we discovered. So by maintaining the same structure, we're able to see a continual flow throughout the process. And so first with the asset health, I'm going to turn that over to Aspen to review briefly a couple of the key facilities condition indexes pieces of data.
Thanks, Mike. So I wanted to walk through what a facilities condition index is and how we extrapolate that out of a facility condition assessment. A facility condition index is, in its most simplest terms, a proportion of a building's current system replacement needs expressed as a proportion of the current replacement value of the building. This is a common tool used in asset management, used for owners of large portfolios to compare relatively across portfolios, to compare apples to apples, if you will, to help make objective and defensible capital prioritization and investment decisions. You may note on the chart that you see here in front of you that the higher the score, the worse the condition is. So it's a little bit opposite to what you may be used to seeing. So the simplest way to explain this is if you have a car worth $10,000 and you need to fix it for $15,000, then it is past its expected useful life. It is similar here with the facility condition index. The higher the index, the closer it is to the end of its useful or serviceable life. Next slide, please. As you can see here, we have developed replacement reserves, which is the minimum investment needed to address building deficiencies by forecast years. The escalation in FCI score as presented here is based on no investment taking place. So the increase in score across years is assuming that no system replacements or capital investments will take place in the buildings. So you can see the deterioration and compare to whether, where to prioritize each investment in order to adequately keep the FCI score in a feasible range for your portfolio. I will pass it back over to Mike.
Thank you, Aspen. We'll move on with our key findings, switching from the facilities condition index to some more of the qualitative data that we gathered. Whereas the Bureau Veritas information is very quantitative in nature, we also folded in several aspects of qualitative data to help inform our key findings. The compliance concerns is one that Shu Wen had mentioned previously. Many of the public safety facilities were constructed prior to code requirements and continue to be occupiable, yet fully functional today. This doesn't necessarily mean that they were built to not built out of compliance. It just means that new codes have been introduced since they've been built, and there's a level of effort required to ensure that those facilities are in alignment with current standards today. The next key finding discusses space constraints. Space constraints is essentially a reference or a reflection of how much space do you have versus how much space will you need in the future based off of projected headcount growth. And so looking at City Hall, police facilities, Fire Station 3, 4, and 5, those are reported at operating at or near capacity. The two charts that we provided show specifically for City Hall and the police facility of where your current headcount is, current as of 2025, and then what those projections are based off of historic growth and year-over-year growth in alignment to the city's population as well. And so those two charts are provided for, again, for City Hall and police facility, and they reflect about a 14% growth in headcount for City Hall and about 18% for police facility. which means that, sorry, Shuman, which means that there's the space constraints that are showing will start to show up over years as more FTEs come on board. Next, we're focusing in on City Hall and the service experience. The diagram that you see here shows the different floors of City Hall. This is called a stacking diagram.
Mayor, can I ask that we just slow down? This is new information that we did not receive prior to the meeting, so I'm just trying to digest and follow along. I'm gonna just ask that we slow down the pace.
I agree. Let's do this, if we'll be okay, because, you know, we can pretty much do whatever we want to do. Would it be okay with all the participants here if, you know, you took a little break and then asked if we had questions about about the slides? I think that would slow down the pace and the questions might be more current to the information, okay? So if that's okay, let's do that. In that regard, do you have any, does anybody have any questions so far? Okay.
I've got a bunch, but I don't.
Well, you're not precluded.
I want to finish the presentation. I want to understand this slide as we go through, and we're just moving really fast.
Okay,
This is stuff that was not in our staff report, so we're seeing it for the first time.
yeah, no, I know.
I have a couple just basic.
Sure, go ahead and go. We're just breaking the rhythm a little bit.
Yeah, I
Have a little
appreciate-
sorbet, you know?
Yeah, and consistent with what everybody said, this is a lot of great, useful information, and I'm writing furiously. I won't go into all of those notes right now. First off, I like the opening statement that this is the first time we've done something like this that anybody can recall, and I think that's very forward-thinking rather than be a city who is just waiting for all of these assets to get to their end of their useful life, and we scramble to figure out how to replace them. So kudos to prior councils who got this thing moving forward. I think it was probably something overdue. But yeah, just a general question. I think one of your categories that you guys were rocketing through here, if I can locate it real quickly, when you're going through your assessment, there we go, was slide 12, when you talk about space adequacy and whether the facility provides enough space for current and future needs. I'm from District 1, and I obviously took a focus on a couple of the assets that were in that location. And it's always just occurred to me, just a general question, has there been thought put into what's a futuristic modern library going to look like? And when you looked at the usage, did you guys go there and look at what's the current use, and are they still checking out books and videos? Or is it a collection point to use some of the current or latest technology? But when you're projecting out to 2045, did some thought go into what's a future community kind of look like, and what's the actual purpose of a library in the future? Could that thing be repurposed? Or and I'm just study session. I'm just throwing ideas out there. But any comment on that?
So, Councilor Bewley, I'll start, and then our consultant can add to that. At this point, we were looking at the conditions. I'm assuming you're referring to the Mesa Verde Library right now. So we are looking at continuing to keep the current operations going, not looking at expanding the footprint of that facility or how it functions, but those things might come when we start planning for any future replacement. The initial thought is to keep, for example, the roof of that library. I've been seeing that as needing to replace for the past few years, but it doesn't rise up to the priority where it has to be funded. So things like that. Make sure that the facility is in good repair, the HVAC systems are in good repair at the site. So those are the main areas. Now, when we were planning for the Donald Dungan Library, that was looked into when that was rebuilt 5 years ago. And they looked at it's a lot more modern in terms of it's how it's built. It has things like teen center. It has areas where teens can gather, and also a lot of computer workstations for people to come and access books in different ways, or access information and work collaboratively too. So those kind of thoughts went into our planning process for Donald Duncan Library. And I'm sure the similar libraries developments are going on elsewhere in the county and other places too.
So if I understand this report, you've done an analysis, and I'm going to be oversimplistic here, but it's to maintain kind of the current functionality and the questions that I'm positing. That's council when we get up there, and these are some of the other factors we go into. Does it make sense to repurpose this facility? Does it make sense to continue to piecemeal out the maintenance, or does it make sense to reconfigure or do something? So, but this report, it's kind of, if we were going to move forward with these specific assets, how to maintain their usefulness and try to start getting caught up on some of the deferred maintenance, if that's the plan.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
There is another, we provided another document in response to council comments, and it has, one of the tables is facility investments over 10 years. And you can see that, we have been investing about $2 million a year on maintenance and about $4 million a year on new construction over the past 10 years. This is average annually, right? I look back and see, just 5 more years back and see what happened. And, in 2010, 2011, 2012, it's almost zero in maintenance and new construction. Most of the investment started in 2014 timeframe, just before this particular review. So before that, building maintenance took a backseat, and not only building maintenance, pretty much all infrastructure maintenance did not get the attention it's getting now.
Yeah.
So we are kind of on the right side right now, trying to maintain our facilities, trying to keep up with our maintenance, but we do have challenges.
And I'm just opining here, and I have one brief question because I don't want to monopolize all the time. Boy, I would look forward to, as we get our hands around this, to have more study sessions because of the Brown Act and the quorum issues. These are the types of things that I think we really need to robustly discuss when we get into prioritizing. But I'm a big advocate for more and better information so that we can get to those decisions. And my last question before I turn it over, I noticed that the Balearic Park Community Center, that's a lease. And maybe this is a question for legal counsel. Who's responsible for the shell, the exterior, the main? Is that a triple net and tenants responsible for the maintenance and upkeep, or where's that one, if we know? And I'm not holding anybody to that level of specificity tonight because this is all coming at us.
I don't know, but we'll look into that. Get back to you.
Okay.
Councilman, we do maintain that facility. We have
But do we
done quite a
maintain it,
bit.
I'm sorry, as an obligation, or we've been maintain, it's a legal obligation, to the best of your knowledge?
It's an obligation because we house many programs with children and our staff. So we, like the HVAC upgrades or the day-to-day painting and all that, we do that. I mean, whatever maintenance is required, we take care of that.
And I lied, I do have one other question. I noticed you guys just put that beautiful asphalt out there. I've been using it. Is there a reason we didn't? Well, we had all the crews out there and they were working on the roads, that they didn't go ahead and re-asphalt the driveway at that time? Not in the budget, or?
It's a different project.
Okay. All right, I'll cede the floor.
Thank you. I have one question and just a quick comment, and I'll have others, but can you go to 23, please? Slide 23. So if you look on the, I guess on either one of these charts, on the left side, it shows an increase, not a huge increase, but definitely an increase of staff over time into the future. Where did you obtain those projections is my first question.
Mr. Mayor, if I can start that too. So we did, so the consultant team did talk to different directors, departments on where we would be heading down the road in terms of staffing needs. And part of the thinking behind this is the RENA numbers itself. There is a projection that we would have 10,000 more units, which means we would add 30,000 people to our city. So that's kind of, okay, now when you have so many more people, then there's other needs that come up in terms of public safety, in terms of staff support. Again, it is hard to project right now
Sure.
how, digitally we will change our day-to-day operations.
Right.
So things may change in some ways, but this is our best projection at this point.
Yeah, I think you anticipated my next point, which is, when we went back to the mayor's conference, and I mean, we're just getting started, in this. Everybody was talking about how we're going to use artificial intelligence to streamline our operations, and which could do two things as it pertains to facilities, which could be outweighed or weighed against the point that Raja made about an increase in housing, which may or may not happen, whether we want it to or not. Some people don't, some people do. And when it happens is rather speculative. But did you consider the introduction of AI into the mix, and also remote work, which, was really in vogue around the time of course, the pandemic, but you're seeing it in the private sector as being a real sticky concept. I mean, perhaps some of you work remotely. Yeah. And so did you consider those kind of trends in the way people execute their jobs, even if we had an increase in housing, because some of those positions would be impacted by AI and remote work, which would impact facilities?
Mayor Stevens, absolutely. Those were things that we considered. And to add a little bit more clarity into how we project these numbers, we also look at a mathematical equation. So we definitely take the inputs of the department leaders and we look at their historic growth trends. And then we also project backwards from FTEs per 1,000 city residents to give us another data point to kind of gauge what the anticipated growth is reported from the department leaders. So with those two data points, we're able to really understand what does historical growth look like and how does it impact future projections. But to your point, things like AI, yes, just scratching the surface of what that looks like. We did have in-depth conversations with each department leader to understand what does the future of work look like for their department, including remote work or hybrid work. Where are there opportunities potentially for seat sharing, if that's something that in the future, if that becomes necessary, is that something that could be entertained or leveraged to help maximize space efficiency? So we had numerous conversations with a lot of different work styles or workplace strategies to understand as best as we can without the crystal ball of what AI might do. What are the different variables that impact each department's projected growth? So we had those types of conversations with a lot of with every department leader.
So my only comment, and then I want to, unless other council members have comments, we can go back to the presentation, whatever, is please don't tighten the bolts too tight on this, because I think the feedback you get from the study session from the council is going to be good, but I'd love to have and I think other council members might express this too, an opportunity to talk to you all in a Zoom meeting or in a private meeting or something like that, either myself or with a Brown Act compliant group, and give you my feedback on these facilities as well. And maybe even take a look at some of them, right? I mean, I've been to most of them. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't been to all of them, but I've been to almost all of them. But the ones I haven't been to, I'd go to and check it out. So I'd like to get my hands a little bit dirtier into this, literally, because I'm sure some of these facilities are pretty dirty. And before we close the book on this, I don't know if that was part of your scope, but if it wasn't, I'd be like to think about expanding the scope so we could do that. Okay, we can go back to the thing and we'll.
Just real quick,
Yeah,
before,
okay.
before I'm going to get in before Arliss.
For sure, go ahead.
I asked permission. No,
It's all right.
Just curious on the consultant side, did you guys, when you were looking at this whole thing, look at space per resident as compared to other cities, how we're doing relative to other cities in our current situation?
Yes, Councilmember Pettis, we did take a look at the surrounding communities and basically what is a benchmark for Costa Mesa compared to other municipalities. So we did do a comparison as well. Forgive me, I don't have some of the exact numbers off the top of my head, but we did a benchmark analysis of FTEs per 1,000 residents to see how did Costa Mesa compare, again, to the exact surrounding areas. So that was a part of our analysis. Again, I don't have those numbers directly off the top of my head.
Do we suck, or can you just give me the general?
Sir, define suck.
Okay, all right, well,
Okay.
thanks.
Very efficient.
Well, I will, like, I mean, how do we compare it generally? Is it more, less, about average?
Well, we can get you accurate numbers, but on top of my head, I think Newport Beach might have a higher staff per 1,000 residents than Costa Mesa, and I think we have a higher than Santa Ana, but we can definitely get you accurate numbers. We have those data.
Okay, and you're asking about space as opposed to staff. Yeah. It'd be helpful, you may not know this, but in your experience in doing these types of analyses, like are there sort of general thresholds? I feel like there's so much that really is city specific, but are there general thresholds or benchmarks in terms of like publicly accessible community space per residence or per population and things like that? Those kinds of benchmarks would be helpful to see as well. I have a few general questions on the stuff that you've already covered. One is I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the data in front of us correctly. You've several times said that you did 20 building analyses. We got 17 in our stack. So like if you go to slide 9, just to make sure I'm processing the information correctly. So we got reports for 17 facilities. In the summary table staff provided us earlier today, there's 17 facilities. You have 20 listed here. We don't have one for the airport loop office. We don't have one for Fire Station 2. We don't have one for the Courtyard warehouse fleet, I believe. Were those done and we just missed them, or were those excluded?
Good.
So for the airport loop office, since that's a leased facility, that one specifically was not taken a look at for facilities conditions assessments. We did do a high-level analysis of what who's there, basically getting an understanding of operations. And so for Fire Station 2, since that one was recently completed for construction, that one was not incorporated into facilities conditions assessment scope.
Sorry, Station 1.
Fire Station 2 is still in the planning.
That's right.
Yeah. So we didn't include
Because
that.
we're investing in a new one.
Yes.
Okay, so that was intentionally excluded. The airport loop office, which I didn't even know we had, but it makes sense. It's a lease building. That was intentionally excluded. Probably shouldn't be on the list here. And then Courtyard warehouse. Courtyard warehouse.
Courtyard warehouse is part of that Courtyard report.
So it's part of the full
Yes,
Courtyard.
that covers building A, B, and the warehouse and fleet.
And then on the list of facilities excluded, so we would add to that Fire Station 2, but it says communication center there. It also says communication. We also have a report on the communication center. So are there two different ones, or is that just a mistake?
That's a typo. We will correct it.
Okay. Yeah, we have a communications building report, so I assumed that was the same thing. I wanted to confirm. Okay. On slide 15, this is where I really needed you guys to slow down. There's a facility scores. In the reports that we got as part of the staff report, it's all about the FCI. So first of all, can you talk a little bit more about this? I know you talked through how you developed the score, but how should we think about this score compared to the FCI scoring, and why are there two different metrics?
So we've collected data from multiple sources. So FCI score came from a study on the physical condition of the building. And then for us, we did multiple interviews, questionnaires, we did sidewalk, and we collected a lot of qualitative data from the occupant perspective, how the users are using the space. So this matrix we showed earlier here was trying to combine all of those information together. So essentially, to answer your question, the FCI index or the FCA assessment is part of the evaluation. It is one of the criteria we looked at when we think about a performance of a building. So, for example, the FCI score, if rated, so each criteria is rated from 1 to 4. So depending on FCI score, the facility is given either a 1 rating or 4, or 2, 3, or 4, and that all comes together to this table. This is a more kind of comprehensive look of the facilities.
Okay, I'm following a little bit more here. So the FCI is really helpful in understanding the current facility condition and a sense of like necessary improvements to keep the facility in like adequate shape. Okay, that's very specific. That kind of somewhat translates or correlates to a dollar number that we need to plan for in terms of investing. Okay, and then this new facilities evaluation score, is that what we're calling it, final score, that's incorporating a whole bunch of other things. Are these weighting factors you're doing, is that like industry standard practice in terms of facilities assessment, or is that something that you guys created for Costa Mesa? How did you determine the weightings?
So it's not necessarily an industry standard, but it was through conversation with project teams to understand what are the priorities. And if we go back to the strategic alignments of the city's goals, we wanted to make sure that we were really looking at, focusing on the right places. We didn't want to focus too much on one or the other if that wasn't relevant for the city's decision-making going forward. And so if you look at the compliance concerns, this one was one that we incorporated knowing that we needed to highlight that there are compliance concerns. And so we had a different weighting methodology applied for that, again, because not every city is different, every municipality is different, and so to have an industry standard for something this nuanced, it doesn't exist at that level. So we built this with the project team and with the department leaders' feedback to make sure that we were focusing on the right things.
Okay, so if we were to, for example, say, I'm just making something up, space adequacy was twice as important, obviously that would change the final scores and so on and so forth. Okay.
Absolutely.
Does the sustainability and resiliency category, I'm looking here, it looks more of like a equipment assessment. Did you look at the like energy intensity of these buildings, right? Like I was really interested in, maybe this comes through our climate work, I don't know, like which buildings are much more energy intensive compared to comparable buildings, which are areas for us to actually reduce costs in terms of utilities. Would that be incorporated in the score or not? I'm thinking it's not, I just want to confirm.
No, ma'am, to that level that wasn't incorporated.
Okay, it's more, what equipment is there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What's in alignment with city strategic goals for sustainability, and how might that be able to be improved, but also for continuity of operations and redundancy of facilities.
Okay. Let me just slip through. I think I'm skipping some of the more detailed things. I just want to understand what's been shared with us. And then, on the space constraints piece, so you talked about looking out on a 20-year horizon. Is there information here on like the current situation regarding space constraints? Are we adequately spaced, or are there major gaps there?
In our appendix, we have a lot more details for the primary administrative spaces. So City Hall and the police headquarters were the two ones that we focused most on, with obviously the highest density of administrative spaces. And we do have that broken out in our appendix. For the immediate term, there are needs at different levels of intensity for different departments. So across the board, that's going to be different for each department, but there are some space constraints at both of those locations in the immediate term, but more so projecting out in 10 to 15 years.
Okay, and you say in our appendix, is that something that we have access to?
Yes, ma'am, that's a part of this presentation.
Oh, okay, the appendix to this presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Good, okay. Okay. I'm ready to keep going if others are. Thank you.
Before we move on, we need to, Councilmember Mars joined us, so we need to do a reading to comply with the Brown Act.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I joined at 8:27. As stated in the agenda, I'm attending remotely from the Hyatt in Arlington, and there are no persons present with me.
Thank you. Okay, why don't you just, if there's no other questions at this time, continue on, and then we'll have more questions for you at the end. And then
Yeah.
we'll open up to the public.
Yes, sir, we'll
Mr.
make sure
Mayor?
we pause.
Yes, so, okay, yes, Andrea.
Sorry, I had staff send me a copy of the presentation, but am I wrong in understanding there's a lot of new information in this presentation that was not in the staff report? Does that jibe with your experience, or am I just missing out because I was 27 minutes late?
I agree. A lot of the information is in the PowerPoint. Did you get a copy of the PowerPoint sent to you?
I did get a copy of the PowerPoint. I'm just, I thought I read the staff report fairly thoroughly before this meeting, and I'm finding myself playing catch up quite a bit. So I'm wondering if that was the rest of council's experience as well.
Well, yeah, the staff report's pretty short, and then we have the facility. All I got was the staff report and then the facility index stuff. So we're all, I think we're all kind of learning some certain things in real time. So why don't you
Thank you.
continue?
One more quick
Yes.
clarifying question. So I'm on slide 14, the facilities evaluation scoring. So I'm looking at the space adequacy score. Is that current space adequacy? Is that like space adequacy today, or is that for that 20-year horizon?
That's today.
Today, okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yes, sir. We'll pick back up on page 24. So this specific key finding was focused at City Hall, and essentially what we're highlighting here is if you look at the building from a cross-section, you see each floor and where each department is laid out. We found that the customer service experience is somewhat challenging as different floors are locked off to the public, different floors are open to the public. And so really just looking at that, it creates a different types of challenges, whether it's security challenges or customer service or customer experience challenges. So that was our key finding here, is just looking at the way that the building is laid out, the way that different floors are accessible, and where key services are provided within the facility. Before we move on from that, any questions on this page?
well, let's just go through it.
Yes, sir.
We'll ask people, it's a relatively informal, as I said at the very beginning. If council, as long as we don't talk over each other, if council wants to interrupt and ask a question,
Certainly.
they're free to do so.
Certainly.
Just maybe count to 5 before speaking on the next slide. That would help.
Yes, ma'am.
Quietly, okay.
It's like it's like she's preparing a witness.
Next page, the employee experience. This is, again, really focused on City Hall, but it could be, actually is applied across the board, where there's, the employee experience is different at each facility, not just each facility, but within each floor of the facilities as well. The lack of space standards has resulted in varying workstation sizes or office sizes across the board. The different types of workspace solutions are made up on the spot to make sure that they're incorporating unique or specific needs. Also, many spaces were subdivided or rendered smaller than they intended to be, or maybe not quite to their full capacity, due to just getting the job done, making sure that things were needed to get the job done that they needed for. Meeting spaces were also limited across the board for collaboration space of different sizes, and also different types of technology. You know, again, going into more digital connections and digital collaboration. Not every collaboration space was outfitted adequately to be able to host those types of engagements. The next page takes a look at the service distribution, which really is what are these publicly accessible services that the public needs to go to a facility for. And so we recognize that the west side was slightly underserved in comparison to other areas of the city. And so with that, we know that there has been recent investment, obviously the Lions Park redevelopment with the library and the community center. Those have increased public amenities in the area, but we also recognize that there are some additional gaps that exist as well. Looking at some of the underutilized assets that are there at the site, the Historical Society building site itself, not the facility, but the site itself, has a lot of untapped potential for additional services that could be provided or shifted to that portion of the city. We also recognize that there are challenges within expanding some of the facilities that are there due to the nature of the building layouts or the type of facilities that they are, specifically the recreation center. But also that there's really a need for addressing some of the broader service gaps that we identified that are not accessible in that part of town, that are done predominantly out of City Hall. And so looking at different types of permitting or information access for residents that may not have as much access to transportation to get to City Hall. The next key finding focuses on emergency response and continuity of operations. So for the Emergency Operations Center, we know that it, obviously the current EOC, it does not support long-term operations. It is outfitted for short-term operations, but there are some specific amenities within it that don't support, again, long-term multi-day or week events. We know that there is also no designated continuity of operations site, but we know that the Fairview Development Center does offer some future potential as a state-run site that could have some collaboration there with long-term COOP locations. For emergency response and public safety facilities, we found that the dispatch facility is slightly outdated, but upgrades are underway to help improve that. We also know that the police department lacks room for growth and space for modern services like the real-time crime centers and different types of drone operations. And so when looking at the question to current capacity, what are the current capacities? The police headquarters was found to have a lot of limitations in its current footprint to accommodate the immediate needs of future growth for some of those services. The community support and shelter facilities, of those that exist, no facility is fully shelter ready, meaning a remain in place shelter location for different types of disasters for community support. They lack some of the requirements such as fully updated ADA accessibility, fully functional kitchens, and backup generator power to be able to maintain shelter in place services for the community. Also, the senior center, while it does have fully ADA access, it has been known to flood in the past during significant storm events, and also that the DRC has showers but lacks full kitchen, and of course, Bellerac's lease status creates a little bit of lack of flexibility and uncertainty with that facility to be able to make that a shelter in place. Okay, the next focus is on sustainability. And this is speaking specifically to solar infrastructure and EV charging. While there are some solar in place and while there is some EV charging in place, the city's goal to move forward to an electric-based fleet will require significantly more infrastructure to support that goal. So looking for opportunities to consider carports with more EV charging at different sites where possible. Energy and systems modernization, that specifically calls out the lack of centralized HVAC or energy management systems to understand where are some of those major energy draws coming from and how to manage that more efficiently. And lastly, sustainability goals. As the city targets LEED, silver, or higher on new facilities, that will also require additional investment into how the facilities are built and designed in the future. Okay, next we're going to switch over to future planning options that Shuwen is going to walk through.
So, Thank you, Mike. So in the key findings section, with all the gaps and opportunities identified, now is time to move on to the action plan. So through the facility conditions assessment, we identified maintenance and repair items that are necessary to maintain building performance. And the next timeline we've shown here, it has a lot of information, but it illustrates potential capital investment the city may choose to make to improve facility conditions. So if you go one step beyond just baseline maintenance, what are some potential capital investment you can make to improve facilities, which may cover major renovations or full replacement of certain city assets? So if you look at this timeline, the gray bar illustrates the deferred maintenance and life cycle replacement that go through the next 20 years. And the colored bar represents larger capital projects that are distributed over the next 20 years, such as renovating City Hall or replacing like fire stations and substations. So all of those capital projects are phased thoughtfully over the 20 years and not all occurring all at once. We included appropriate planning time to be able to secure funding for those big investments.
Sure. Oh, you got to turn your mic on.
I'm trying to see how this chart would probably tie into 21. Like in 21, I think the gray, when you say deferred maintenance, is that pretty much the numbers that we see on this page 21? Like, we'll just take the first one, Blair Community Center, 43,000 in 2025. That is a number just to kind of maintain it in the year 2025, and then as we extrapolate out, that's the dollars to keep it from reaching the end of its useful life, so to speak.
Correct, yes.
So if we go back to 30, is it accurate that the gray area is consistent with the chart I just looked at, and then these green would be additional funding to actually replace or repurpose or put a new structure?
Yes, that's the.
Okay, I got a
You're
gold
reading
star.
it very,
I got a gold
very
star.
accurately.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from the council members?
Yeah, I mean, I'll
sorry.
ask, digesting this, I'm still digesting it, but I'm gonna ask our staff, is this slide 30, is this your recommendation? Have you guys looked at this, and do you agree with these recommendations in terms of when buildings should be demolished and constructed?
So Councilmember Reynolds, as you can see in this one, not all the buildings are supposed to be demolished and reconstructed. There are quite a few that are renovation stuff projects here. I think the earliest one that you see on the list here is Station 4. Again, it depends on our evaluation, ongoing basis. Again, we don't just say, okay, this is the list and we
Raj,
exactly
I'm just
follow
asking
this
generally,
list.
like,
Yeah.
have you guys reviewed this, and do you
Yes.
generally agree with these recommendations? That this is not the consultant saying, here's an idea. You're saying that this is a proposal you're putting in front of council. Is that right?
That's correct. But again, it's not that we agree with everything on the exact timeline that's being referenced in here. So we might differ in that way. A good example is, for example, they say the City Hall glazing, all the windows have to be replaced in the next 5 years. Well, that doesn't mean we will go through that process.
Sure.
That's a lot of glass to be replaced at $3 million. So we might say that's not needed, or, so those are the evaluations that we have to make. But in general, yeah, this is what is proposed, and we agree with that, in general.
And one specific question to continue to understand this, looking at the West Side substation, for example, I recall numerous discussions about that building being in really poor shape, sort of urgent funds to make it habitable, safe for employees. But here, I'm not seeing, like, did we fix all that? Because I hear on this chart, I'm not seeing any deferred maintenance or replacement until 2031. Or even then, it's just pre-work and planning and design. So help me understand, sort of reconcile those two things.
So, Councilman Reynolds, Patrick and I walked with West Side Substation with our police command staff, and we reviewed the needs of that, immediate needs, and we have sufficient funding at this time to address what's needed. We could upgrade, we could make that upgrades in terms of new, not only new furniture and carpeting and paint, but also upgrade the restrooms and make it more accessible. Again, this is for a portion of the site that is being used by our staff. Not the whole building is not being used. So we looked at how we can make improvements to make it better for the staff that's working right now. There's a long-term need for that site, and that's reflected in the outside of the near-term timeline.
Okay, so the issues that we had heard previously that need to be addressed still need to be addressed, but you're saying that's not showing up here because that's already been funded?
The immediate needs are funded.
Funded but not done?
Yes,
Okay.
but not done.
Okay, thank you.
Raja,
Yes.
so that includes the roof leakage that's noted in the facilities condition report?
It does address repairs to, all the, systems and roof to make sure it is functional.
When did we fund a roof replacement?
We did not, it's not a roof replacement, it's just roof repair. It's part of we allocated $900,000 towards West Side Substation, and that would take care of the immediate needs of the site, but not the future. If we think about reconstructing, demolishing and reconstructing, that's a much bigger, larger project that has to be separately funded.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that, but there's sort of patching the roof so it's not leaking. There's replacing the roof, and then there's demoing the building and building a new building. And that's a spectrum that I would think we'd need to make a decision on.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, we did walk the site and identified with our command staff on what's needed in the immediate term.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on.
Yeah, so this timeline, as we talked about, is really intended to be a planning tool to help the city understand sequencing, scale, and some long-term implications. So this timeline may shift depending on fundings and priorities. So this slide summarizes the estimated capital investments over the next 20 years. The orange bar shown here represents the replacement reserve identified through the FCA. So that's the table we just showed in slide 20. So that's the deferred maintenance and life cycle replacement costs shown in the orange columns. So the blue bars represents new construction and major renovation projects we just shared on the timeline, such as fire station replacement or city hall renovation. So this is showing if all of the recommendations we put forward in the previous timeline were executed, this would be the amount of the estimated financial investment that would need in the next 20 years. So all the costs shown here are escalated according to the projected timing, and funding is assumed to accumulate throughout the planning period. So if everything is implemented, the average capital investment would be approximately 11 million per year over the 20 years. So 4 million on replacement reserve per year and 7 million on new construction and renovation.
So I've got a quick question I've been dying to ask. So if you look at 2027 replacement reserve, I mean, that's right around the corner. We're a matter of months from 2027, and we're a couple months from doing our budget. What's the reason there's so much going into the replacement reserve in the next fiscal year?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is based on the findings of the facility condition assessment where building assessors go out and assess the condition and the effective age of systems in place and estimate when they would need to be replaced in order to keep the building operating optimally and as is. So there just happens to be a lot of systems that have a forecasted replacement year of 2027 as a result of the facility condition assessment findings.
Okay. I understand. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So quick question.
Question.
In the numbers, so in the upper right, and this is, I think, your kind of conclusion here. City needs to invest an average of 11 million annually, 4 million on replacement reserve and 7 million on new construction. Earlier, Director Sethuraman described our average investment in facilities over the last 10 years, which was 2 million a year on maintenance and 4 million a year on new construction. Am I comparing the right numbers? So like what we have been doing 2 and 4, this study is saying needs to grow to 4 and 7.
That's correct, Councilmember Reynolds. However, I just want to point out, I mean, that's the ideal.
I'm comparing the right numbers.
Exactly,
right?
you're comparing the right numbers.
Lots of caveats, I know.
However, it doesn't mean that we have to program that much every year. It's ideal. For example, the biggest expense that you see on this one for $9 million is for the City Hall. Now, as I mentioned, one of the big expense for the City Hall are the replacement of all the windows or all the glass that's on every floor. We may not choose to do that project, and that might bring that particular value down significantly. And so things like that are out there. So we have to take a look at this and prioritize what's needed and go from there.
Or somebody does.
Yes, we will. Staff does.
Yeah.
Okay, and two more questions just to understand this again. So that 11 million annually, right? So you've clarified that includes some things that are not critical. That's just part of the normal building maintenance stuff. Okay, but again, this is for only the 17 buildings included in this analysis. Is that right? So it doesn't include was like 4 or 5 other facilities that we excluded from the analysis.
That's correct.
Okay, and I'm assuming I should not take away that those buildings are not going to need any investment for the next 10 years.
So, Councilor Reynolds, yeah, there will be need for some of the buildings, especially I can see the country club will be needing investments, at some point in the future. And so there are other needs that are out there.
Okay, it'd be helpful, I know those were excluded from the analysis, but just to get some, as part of the follow-up, like what's the scale of the 10-year investment need for those buildings as well? So we're not looking at those when we're way behind schedule, right? Okay. And does this include, so when I was reading the reports that we got, it looked, and the FCI scores, as we discussed earlier, I understood that as investments needed to maintain the existing buildings. But then the previous slide we had said, maybe we demolish and construct new buildings. Are those two different cost estimates? Or how should I understand that in terms of the cost estimates?
So in this chart, if a building is replaced, And that portion, so for example, like the substation is replaced after 2035. And that part of the replacement reserve identified through that substation FCA is taken off from this chart, so taken off from the orange column in this chart.
Okay, so this chart is reflecting the assumptions in terms of new building replacement on the previous slide?
Correct.
Okay, so it won't then reflect the, exactly the costs from the, like, maintain the building forever estimates?
Yeah, the maintain the building forever cost is outlined in the earlier, I think, slide 20, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, yeah, of course.
I just want to put a pin in this for council, this idea that there is a regular investment that should be maintained just to fund our facilities. I think we'll talk about the CAN later this year and about the idea of funding capital needs, which sometimes turns into the kitchen sink of things we need to fund, including bond payments. But there is an ongoing need that is exclusive to facilities that we might consider as an alternative to CAN as we enter the budget process. So not expecting council to have opinions on that right now, but something that I'd like to talk more about with staff in the coming months.
It's a good point. Thank you. Go ahead.
Great. So next this is really for referencing. So previous slide, we showed the capital expense, and this is showing the operating expense. So operating expense, including utilities, janitorial services, daily repairs for leased facilities, includes like rents. So currently 2025 at around 4 million is where you're currently spending, and as so this is escalated based on inflation, and also as city's portfolio grow, operating expense will keep increasing.
Okay, and as we come to a close here with our presentation, we just want to kind of highlight what are some of the facility master plan, big highlights and pieces that we discussed and covered. I want to circle back to the categories that we use of asset health, which is really what's the current state of the facilities, the functional performance, which again, operationally, how are the buildings performing for the services that they are providing, and then the strategic alignment for city's goals. If we look at asset health, again, as we just discussed, $4 million annually as a baseline maintenance and life cycle replacement, not including the new construction or renovation. Also, the facilities that were built under previous code standards, they may require substantial upgrades or replacement based off of numerous factors of code compliance for each of those facilities. Also, consider long-term strategy for each facility. Again, this is what we presented here today is an option. It's up, I think, next steps for the city are really to understand what are the priorities for maintenance, for maintaining long-term, or replacement, or building new. So again, these were options that we presented and not necessarily the only way forward. For functional performance, there are ways to explore efficiently accommodating the growth. And so I think looking at the city facilities that are primarily focused on administrative work, those have opportunities to accommodate growth efficiently with different types of workplace strategies. Also improving public access. We talked about that a little bit with the City Hall customer experience. And then standardizing and modernizing space needs, really to have equitable workplaces across floors, across locations, and across employee types. And then finally, with strategic alignment, again, with West Side communities, as that area is growing, what are some of the ways that can be serviced more equitably? Assessing where facility readiness can be improved for emergency response, and supporting the community in the events of emergencies. And then finally, integrating sustainability goals into the facilities as you look forward in the future to maintaining or renovating facilities. What are those opportunities to incorporate those sustainability measures that you're aiming for? Finally, with our next steps, we want to move forward with finalizing the facilities conditions assessment report. So taking the information we presented to you today, and Mayor Stevens, any feedback we would welcome, and to be able to incorporate that and understand how we can make this a document that you can move forward with. So that's our next steps, is to really finalize this report. Next, also identifying critical improvements needed at various facilities over the next 5 years, as has been mentioned, that we've identified what are those needed, but which ones are critical that must be done. Next is annually prioritizing improvements based on facilities conditions, staff, and community needs and budget. Next, develop a long-term CIP strategy to address future facility needs. And finally, review facilities conditions every 5 years as facilities evolve and needs evolve, and technology incorporated into workflows may significantly change or alter space needs in the future. And that concludes our presentation for this evening.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Of course, Ron.
First, I want to apologize because I might have told Mike to be very quick in his presentation because it's a long presentation. And this is actually one half of his presentation. There is another part to it where he looked into the future needs too. So Gensler team looked at it. We'll get that to you separately. It talks about each, for example, City Hall, how we can expand, modernize each floor and create more cubicles, workspaces. If you have that, Mike, we can share that quickly. And again, I consider this as a start of the discussion. So we welcome your comments, community's comments, and then we'll have another presentation at some point to finalize this discussion.
I get it. And so just my one question is just one of basic timing. When do you think it'll come before us to make some final decisions and as a council? Is this like summertime or fall, or what are we talking?
Yeah, I think in about 3 months, I'll work with our city manager staff to come up with the appropriate time to come back to you. But most of the information is there. We have to compile it, get your comments, incorporate all that, and we should be ready to come back in a few months.
Yeah, so like July, August,
Early,
something.
exactly.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so that's good. I think you guys have said enough for us to absorb. Let's go down the list and make sure we cover all the questions and comments of council. We also have to open it up to the public. Should we open it to the public? Let's open up to the public now, if
Mayor,
that's okay. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
they were going to give us a quick, and maybe we won't stop for questions, but a quick view of some of the other analysis they've already done. I would like to see that.
Okay.
So this was in reference to just some of the additional detailed analysis and planning options that we did for City Hall. So as Shuwen gets to that page, really we went into a deep dive to understand what are these future projections that each department has shared with us, where are there the deficiencies or challenges, and really looking for opportunities to optimize the specifically for City Hall. So unless, Councilmember Reynolds, unless you'd like me to go into more detail, I think keeping it at a high level, what we're showing here is 3 different options of levels of renovation to accommodate some of the growth at different levels, again, of investment. Looking at the existing, the top diagram there shows the level 4. This is the level 4 current state on that top diagram. So that shows the current breakout of workstations, offices, and also meeting spaces and collaboration space. In the middle, you see what we called as a moderate renovation and how we can create a 28% increase of spaces through moderate renovation. And finally, a major renovation would give you a 46% increase, including 9 additional offices and much more collaboration space that would help accommodate more of the virtual or hybrid type of virtual meetings that take place. So this is one example of what we conducted as a deeper dive analysis to accommodate the different challenges that we reflected in the key findings.
So, thank you. So this is an example of how you can use the same building, the same space, just reorganized to get a lot more
Yes, ma'am.
value. The cost of doing that, we haven't seen those numbers. Do you have those? I'm not looking for those numbers now, but do you have those numbers already costed out that we can see as part of future discussions?
Yes, that's actually included. So this renovating the office for, we have the cost here as of 2025, it's about 12 million, just a rough order of magnitude. But this is really what the blue bar in, if you remember that capital cost, this slide, moving it back. So this is really what the blue bar shows. Renovating the office floor is one of the actions. So the first line, maintain, remodel typical office floor. So if that is carried forward, that cost has been built into the blue part of this cost estimate.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and we don't, you mentioned that appendix earlier, we don't have that information.
Your last page of your presentation has the new construction costs. Appendix, it says Appendix B on it.
So the remodel proposal, like what you just, or remodel options, like what we just shared, that's gonna be on here.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would appreciate getting the slide deck for that additional information, because we don't have that.
Yeah. Again, these are ideas, doesn't mean that, I mean, we have the cost for ongoing maintenance. We could continue maintain our facilities. It's only if we choose to do, okay, we want to renovate a building, or then these are the costs.
Yeah, but I think to Arliss's point, let's get the information. I mean, if we don't read it, that's one thing, but let's open it up to the public. Anybody? Ralph? You can take 3 minutes, Ralph. It's all good. Here, let me, go ahead.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Congrats to Gensler and consultants, all the people involved in this analysis. Seems very thorough, detailed, that's for sure. Year ago at this time, study session, mid-year reviews, discussion on CAN. Do we waive CAN? Don't we waive CAN? Full CAN, partial CAN. During that discussion, actually, Andrea Marr, Councilwoman Marr, initiated the point in discussion with Director Sethuraman. I'm paraphrasing. What's your concerns? What kind of keeps you up at night? And leading to, we need to do a prioritization of the full capital plan. Later on in the meeting, Mayor Stevens, Mayor Pro Tem Chavez seconded that opinion. That didn't happen, unfortunately. Given this assessment, facilities assessment, given the park assessment that was just completed and reviewed with the PACS Commission last week, in which they're going to weigh in on it this coming Thursday, the glass is half full. This is a prime time to now do the prioritization of the complete facilities plan, not just facilities, capital plan, not just facilities, parks, streets, transportation, the other categories that I think medians and whatever else. I would urge, I've been campaigning for this for years. I would urge you to do this. For those of you who are termed out in November, get it done by November. Frankly, I think 3 months may be a little optimistic. Maybe that's okay for the facilities portion of it, but it may take longer when you add in the parks and the streets and the transportation and everything else. But not only from an operational standpoint do you need this, but from a financial standpoint, you need this. Actually, frankly, the last couple of years, the long-term financial plan, the 5-year plan, I didn't put much faith in it. I thought it was much too optimistic. The cash needs were not fully recognized. I don't believe in that. And so you need this, you need the strategic plan here for capital, not just operationally, but for cash standpoint, for financial standpoint. And that might be a bigger reason than operational, because there's some big numbers in here.
Thanks, Ralph. Anybody on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Cynthia, please.
Hi, Cynthia, you have the floor. You can take 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I agree with Ralph that there needs to be a full assessment. We need to get the full picture here. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was, of course, my pet peeve, which is the tennis center. And the tennis center serves a lot of people. As we increase our population by the build out of the anticipated housing, it's going to be like dropping another city in the middle of Costa Mesa. You know, another 40,000 residents is going to create a demand on all these facilities. Now, the tennis center, of course, has been around for a long time. I played there back in the mid-'70s, and it hasn't changed much. It seriously needs to be updated. You know, what we see in the assessment on the tennis center, though, was that when it came under plan type and descriptions in safety, which is an observed or reported unsafe condition that, if left unaddressed, could result in injury, a system or component that presents potential liability risk. We lost the USTA tournament that was played at the tennis center specifically because that tennis center was judged unsafe by USTA. Our tennis center does not have the facilities for us to have a tournament there, is what they said. Specifically, you know, it was the lack of an HVAC system, but, you know, locker rooms. Yeah, we got people changing their clothes out in the parking lot, for heaven's sakes. That tennis center needs to be raised and reconstructed. If you look at how other cities use their tennis centers, they are money-making operations. They have meeting rooms. They have facilities that can be used for other than the tennis center. But we need to think about how we can better use that facility for income for the city. Thank you.
No further speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, close public comment. Why don't we just go down the row and start with Mike, and then go to Lauren, and then Andrea, and then we'll skip me and go down the row, and I'll go last. Mike?
Only had a couple. I know my colleague here had a number of questions. So I was just looking at 34 in particular, your next steps, identify critical improvements, and develop a funding strategy. Could you guys elaborate on that a little bit? What you look into as you get into each facility, and I'm sure Title 24 type upgrades and all these things that we're talking about. When you do your analysis on funding, do you look simply at our general fund or allocated amounts, or do you look for potential state, federal, county lanes that we can look into?
Councilman Bewley, it's all of the above. So sometimes it's bonds that we go after for major projects to fund improvements. As I mentioned, the last 10 years or so, we've been able to allocate $6 million of our city money towards these projects, $2 million in maintenance and $4 million towards new construction. So we've been, doing quite reasonably well in terms of trying to keep up with the maintenance. But of course, we need to add to that over time, and any increase in revenues down the road will be used for helping towards that goal.
And then I really liked Ralph's commentary about using this as a potential opportunity to not just the CIP, the facilities, but let's look at the parks, let's look at the streets. And my question is, these city asset structures that are the subject of this report, if we branch out into the parks, and is that type of analysis, is that something that can be done in-house? I know we've got a parks assessment going on right now through the Parks Committee, or, I'm curious how much burden something like this to put on the city staff versus using an outside contractor. Not looking to take work away from you guys, but I'm just curious.
So, Councilman Bewley, yeah, the park assessment was completed and was presented to PAC's Commission, and we took that information and now we incorporated that in a 5-year plan, knowing that a lot of the projects are actually in a future column for funding later. We assumed that we would renovate a park every year. And if we get lucky, like with the funding, where we got $10 million from our state senator recently, and we worked on 3 parks, and our supervisor funded a big chunk of skate park, which will come to you for approval. And we also are working on Brentwood Park. So quite a few parks are getting done in a in 1 year time frame. This year, for example, and we may have those kind of opportunities down the road, but we try to be, when we get those, we move projects ahead of the schedule. One good example I can think of is our alley program. We did a similar assessment back in 2010 on our 129 city alleys, and majority of them were in failing conditions. We actually had dirt alleys, we had asphalt. Alleys were in a very poor shape back in 2010, and we started a program. Every year we tackled few. Right now, I think 90% are done in concrete, completed. We have very few left. We'll come to you next meeting, I think, or in April, for renovating another 10 of those. So I think 105 of the 129 are done. So we made progress on that one. And now when those alleys are concrete, that'll last for 100 years. So same strategy, down the road, as we keep working towards these projects, we'll get there. Roads is another example. Our PCI was in a bad shape. Before when we did a road project, we had to go all the way to subgrade. We had to dig, 4 feet to fix a road. Now, our PCI, our pavement condition index, is at 85, which means most of the streets we just grind a couple inches and then we put back the pavement. Much reduced cost and much more efficient. We might do localized areas of repairs, but most of them are, you'll see slurry seal or grinded overlay. So there are funding sources for those kind of projects. Luckily for streets, we use other means. For facilities and parks, the sources get limited.
I'm going to not cut you off there. I think and that's all useful info, but you kind of underscored one of my concerns. You gave me a kind of an update on streets and the alleys and an update on what's happening in the parks and some funding. And I think, and I'm going to probably speak what I thought I was hearing from Ralph and what I understand. As a council, it'd be useful to me if we've got a workable, realistic, not just a wish list 5-year plan. We actually do a citywide. We've started here with the facilities. Proper kudos to you, and since I've been up here for a year, I think all of the kudos are justified with your knowledge and how you run our department. But the day may come when Raja isn't walking around here with all of this encyclopedic knowledge of what's going on. And a future council would like to have a 5-10-year plan that's citywide. And then as we get these one-off funding sources that fall out of the sky, or we get granted something, sure, we can jump ahead and apply it. But it would be nice to have as close to concrete as we can roadmap that is there for the current staff, current council, and future council. So I don't know if that's feasible. I think it should be feasible. And I would just hope that city manager and staff, and I think, again, kudos that we've started this process, this facilities, but I really think it would be beneficial for long-term planning to have a citywide thing that we can all look at. And as a new guy who came on last year, it was completely Greek to me. But if I know that there's been this kind of thoughtful research into a plan that's identified a long-term scope, I'm all about information. So
Yes,
thanks.
We'll definitely work on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Veritas, for your guys' report. This is a really good report. I have a couple of concerns when I'm looking through this. I read through most of the facility condition assessments. And one thing in particular that I'm seeing is our electrical systems in just about every building are very taxed, meaning they're in poor condition, they need to be updated, whether it's a switch panel or an electrical box. And what I find interesting is that most of our fire departments have fire alarm systems that are in poor condition. One of the things that I would like to see is what it would take through at the very least, all of our fire departments to get them up to a level of safety that would be commercially acceptable based on the code, as far as like fire hazard stuff in our fire stations. And I know one of the number one fire hazards is electrical, and it just seems it's all throughout most of our facilities that it seems that we have a dilapidated electrical system. So maybe we can get together on that, or if there's some sort of other presentation. Some of these retrofits are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm not quite sure how that happens. I know we do a lot of, we've done for the last at least 15 years, a lot of cost saving and electrical needs savings. I just don't understand how this came about. But if someone wants to explain, I'd love to hear it. If this is something that comes for another day, that's fine. I just want to take note that it's all across the board, and I would really like to see this addressed. Thank you.
Councilor
Thank you.
Camaros, maybe
Yes.
Aspen, do you want to, I just want to make sure that there is no safety type of an issue. All buildings are occupiable, and it's not that anything is unsafe. Can you elaborate on this fire?
Yeah, so the effective age of the systems, as found by the facility condition assessments, doesn't necessarily indicate a safety issue in the current moment unless very clearly stated. So the fact that they are nearing the end of their useful life is a way for the city to forecast and plan for these replacements in a timely manner so that it does not become a safety issue. But if our assessors ever found an immediate life safety issue on site, that was communicated immediately. And I don't believe we had any immediate life safety issues when we were out there, but that is standard protocol and would have been communicated immediately.
Okay, that's fine, and thank you for that. I just want to make sure that we're looking at that, because I can see it across just about every facility condition assessment that we have an over surcharged electrical system in each building. So thank you.
While we're on this, I just want to jump in and ask a quick question that I had. On page 15 of the PowerPoint, there's a column and it's entitled Compliance Concerns. And the first five rows have a Y, which to me indicates, yes, there are compliance concerns. What's the nature of those compliance concerns? I think you've said that just now that it's not life safety concerns, but what are the concerns, and compliance with what?
Yes, sir. There were a variety of different types of concerns that were, when the facility was built, it wasn't built to meet those specific needs of modern fire stations or police facilities. So those are, again, they're operational, they're safe. It isn't a life safety issue. It's more getting to modern code compliance for modern operations of fire stations and police facilities.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, it mainly refers to the gender compliance. It's to make the facilities gender neutral.
Oh, gender compliance. Oh, I get it. I understand.
That's the primary.
Yes. So a statutory compliance with ADA and things of that nature.
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
to
thank you.
accommodate, yeah.
Arliss, you want to say something?
Okay. Well, I was gonna read what you described as a Y in the compliance column, but if you're confirming that that's a whatever legal requirement or something, okay. Thanks.
Good. Andrea, you're up.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just echo Ralph's comments, right? I think this is great information. Now, what do we do with it, right? What do we change in terms of how we operate, how we plan, how we think about our capital improvement projects? Between this and parks, we now have a lot of very detailed information about what's broken, what's working, what needs to be replaced going into the future. And so now I think it's incumbent on us as a council to do something productive with that information. Does that mean looking at our 5-year CIP differently? I do think I'd like to see some sort of amalgamated scoring of now all of our facilities, including parks, to try to understand where we should be prioritizing. But I'll just emphasize, when we get to the budget and we start looking at the capital improvement projects, I think it's really incumbent upon us as council to look at it in the context of these facilities that, to Lauren's point, we know have issues, or we know are not meeting our own compliance requirements, or we know are about to be real issues and need to address now. So I appreciate the report. I do wish that we had posted that presentation as part of the agenda, because there was a lot of information in there that was not in the staff report that we were trying to digest in real time. But be that as it may, I think now the question is, what do we do with this information? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Manuel.
Thank you, John. I'll say John, keep it casual.
Say it.
I'm wearing a suit
I like it.
for a reason, but first of all, thank you guys for a good job, staff and consultants. This is really, really good presentation. I think the fact that you're hearing council members mentioned they wish they had it just demonstrates the value you provided us. And again, I'm just gonna echo a couple things that have been said, because I think, quite frankly, we're going down the same path anyways. Ralph and Andrea are very right. Like, we just have to bite the bullet and start investing in our infrastructure. Our city is about 72 years old. Some facilities are not that old. Maybe they're 50 years old, 40 years old, but it is time to start investing in our facilities, in our parks. And I think there are cities that we can look at, like Cyprus, that have designated funding pots that have to be spent on certain things. I am not a fan of the cap, and I'm willing to look at maybe changing it to be for actual funding facilities, not just any capital improvement. I think that would be very smart, but I don't think we can avoid the reality that we just have to bite the bullet and start allocating funding from our budget to solve these issues. To Ralph's point of urgency, let's move up a month. Let's get it done by October. And again, I think for me, what really frightens me is just that the lowest ranking scores came from our public safety facilities. And that just terrifies me, because that's who our residents call when things go wrong. And it just demonstrates again why it's important for us to just get in the habit of systematically upgrading our facilities to avoid being in a situation. So my general comments, again, thank you for the support. It's really well done. A lot of good information, but in my eyes, it's simple. We just have to start prioritizing these improvements for our parks and for facilities.
Arliss.
Okay. I think I generally agree with everything that's been said so far. I'm really glad we're doing this. I'm really glad we've done the parks assessment. I think I remember Councilmember Mar really pushing for this facilities one. So, and we've, in the past 8 years or so, done this for IT infrastructure and set up that master plan. I recall some really surprising information early on about our fleet and fleet maintenance and how we're funding that. I know our parks commissioners are reacting to the parks assessment. So that is actually my highest priority out of this, even though I have a whole bunch of detailed questions that I'll, probably save for another time. But even just like some quick numbers on comparing the investments that we typically make now with what's projected in terms of the investment needed, right? So comparing the 2 and 4 to the, 4 and 7 recommendation. I think seeing those numbers on the park side is going to be really important for us. Seeing those numbers on fleet management is going to be important. What are those numbers for IT and all the necessary infrastructure, digital or physical, and I'm probably missing a couple things, streets, and then, what fraction of that is typically funded through outside funds versus need to be funded through general fund. I would, again, I think you can do some general math that gives the basic picture of that on a big scale, ahead of budget season. I don't think we can wait till October for that. I think we need to just get a general sense of that. Is that reasonable? I mean, that's looking at historical spending and then, making some assumptions to project long-term spending. Is it reasonable to say that's a fairly straightforward analysis to do?
Yes, Councilmember Reynolds, I would agree with that. I think this tool is coming to us at a valuable time, along with all of the information that you just described, to help inform our CIP going forward into the next fiscal year, but then our longer-term CIP, and then how we fund our priorities.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. Okay. And then, as part of that, I already mentioned kind of folding in, making sure that we have some, line item for estimates on the buildings that were not included in this analysis, because we're agreeing that we're not going to not invest in them for the next 10 years, right, or 20 years. Okay. What I'd like to see that we've only, or maybe we've touched on in a couple places, is tell me if this was already part of the analysis. Otherwise, I'd like to think about how to consider it. Is where are there significant cost savings opportunities or revenue generation opportunities as part of some of this facility maintenance? So obviously any safety stuff happens first, but so for example, I mentioned there may be upgrades that actually have a pretty significant impact on our utility costs, right? And so that might be an important part of, or a valuable part of the scoring metric in terms of how we prioritize that, right? Since we know we're going to need more money than I think we have to do these analysis. Cynthia McDonald mentioned, there's maybe revenue generation opportunity. I'm assuming John will also mention that with some of our facilities. So looking at ways, not just what's everything going to cost us, but where are there opportunities to save money or generate revenue. Or grow revenue generation from these investments. And just one question on kind of the new construction piece. Is the new construction considerations looking at some of the more modern, modular construction opportunities? I'm thinking of some of our smaller buildings, like the Historical Society or even the West Side Substation, where some of the prefab type construction might, I have no idea if it's cheaper or not. I'm assuming it is. But is that considered in the analysis, or are we just assuming kind of traditional construction of new buildings?
Yes, ma'am. Just looking at more traditional construction methodologies.
Okay. I said one more question, but I do have one more. Okay, slide 33, if you can go there. There were some really interesting things on this slide that I was happy to see. I didn't expect this to be in scope. Maybe it's not. But I just want to understand if it is in scope, and if so, like where does this come into the analysis? So for example, bottom in the middle, standardize and modernize spaces to meet the needs and expectations of today's workforce is what you showed at the end of the presentation, kind of in that. Okay, and those costs then, the blue bar, as you said, that's included in the 4 million and 7 million average costs. Okay, so that is in there. Upper right, West Side communities could benefit from neighborhood scale satellite services. So I'm interpreting that as localized services from buildings that don't currently exist, possibly a mobile vehicle. I know we've seen that for health services. I think there's some from like clerk services by the county. Is that what you're thinking about? And if so, and is that considered in the cost, or is there any analysis around those types of ideas?
So one of the opportunities identified is there are untapped potential in the historic society building site. So currently it's like a modular building, very small footprint, but
It's a former bank.
yes. So in the recommendation, we proposed a replacement of that building for city as a multi-department shared city facility. It could be used for recreational purposes. It could be used for some of the satellite services, like permitting services from like moving from City Hall to that area. Like there are opportunities there. That's what we kind of referring to from here, like bringing services to the west side.
Okay, so that's a specific concept. Is that concept included in the cost estimates in front of us? Okay, so is everything on this page included in the cost estimates?
Yes.
Okay, so I just need to understand what the concept is. I'm sorry, really, third time is a charm, last one. This is actually supposed to be the first one. On the summary that staff put together for us, pulling together data from the individual facility reports, there's 21,000 identified as safety issues, 15,000 identified as environmental issues, which was like an air quality concern, and 93,000 on accessibility. At least the safety and environmental, those are relatively small numbers and seem urgent. Do we have a plan to just address those?
Yeah, Councilmember Reynolds, anything that is immediate safety needs, we will address them. We have funding to do that.
Okay, and that would include, what on this chart? Is that safety, environmental?
Yes.
Okay. I thought maybe accessibility, but I'll let you judge. Okay, thank you. That was it, really.
Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, John. So, I mean, I'm excited we're doing this. I think it's great. Mostly, I think we're at a jumping off point. That's why I'm excited. I think that we have an opportunity as a city here. Facilities planning, in my view, should go hand in hand with evaluating staffing levels and programmatic priorities at the city level. So I'm not excited to spend more money, but I do think infrastructure is a primary responsibility that we should be addressing. And how we find the money can come from a lot of different approaches. And I think looking at staffing and this is a 20-year outlook, so it's tough priorities are going to evolve, councils are going to change. And facilities, in my view, should follow function, and it's our responsibility to ensure that function remains efficient. And I think that's where the money's going to come from. So I think we have a real opportunity to really start looking at how the city spends money and how we can start focusing on what really matters, which in this case includes infrastructure. So thank you.
Lauren?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just have a couple of more things. How did you guys go about picking the buildings out that were in need of assessments? Who gave you directives on doing that? How did that go?
That came from staff. That we prepared that when we went out to RFP for the assessment. So for example, Station 1 was recently built. We didn't include that. Station 2 is on schedule to get built. We didn't do that. The communication center, just anything that was in plan to be significantly remodeled, we didn't include.
Okay. So I noticed the golf course wasn't in this. Was that done on purpose?
So, Councilor Gamar, the golf course has a project on our books for modernization study. So there is already a project that's programmed in our CIP.
Okay, do we have a date on when we're going to start that study or how that's going to go? Do you know
Yes,
what it
Councilor
is?
Gamar, we have a few ongoing projects. As soon as we have staffing that completes those projects, we'll jump on that project.
Okay, all right, I just noticed that it wasn't on there. Thank you, that's all I have, since that last thing.
Okay, so I have some comments. I thought it was very interesting. I mean, everything you guys put together was great. I think what we've heard from some council members is it would be helpful to have the information. You know, we've got this now, but you've got all these other slides and stuff like that, and get that information as soon as possible to us so we can consider it well before we make any decisions on the action items. Like, for example, I mean, I'm just like super pragmatic. This would have been good like in a notebook, right? Just old school, you know, anyway. And then this would have been really good if it's possible. It's really a nice PowerPoint, very effective, but some type of a narrative report, I think would be digestible in writing, you know, for the public and for the council, because the public's going to weigh in on this at some point, and before we make any hard and fast decisions. I liked council, you guys did really great comments, so I'm not going to repeat all of them, but some of them stood out. I liked Mike's comment when he was talking about the Mesa Verde Library. And I'll give you a little tiny story about that. I'm on the TCA, the Toll Road Board, and we were just making a decision about whether we completely refurbish our headquarters or whether we tear it down and build up another building. And I was like the only one that I didn't vote for it in the end because I didn't want to just do a protest vote, but would have probably voted for tearing it down and building up a new one. Because, you know, who wants to have a 60-year-old building? And that was what we would have if we remodel it 30 years from now to be 60 years old. So just for fun, I Googled 60-year-old buildings in in Orange County, 60-year-old buildings in Orange County. And the first building that came up was the Mesa Verde Library. And but no, Mike's point I think is good because as we look at this and we just sort of really imagine what the world is going to look like, particularly a service like the library, that we have to be very creative about how can we shrink that and or change it or reimagine it and make it more appealing as a service offering to our community, while even maybe reducing our facilities cost, or at least the cost of replacing it that is reflected in this report, with thinking about, and I'm sure you considered some of that, but trying to replicate what was there, you know, just completely reimagine it. And that's for other people to be up here to do. And I'm not asking you to do it, but I'm making this comment to the world, to the ether. No one's ever going to listen to it again. Funding sources. You know, it's an interesting thing. Raja mentioned my favorite thing, that we have a great PCI, Pavement Condition Index. We also have the alley project, which has been going on for 10 years and supported by all these councils and council members. Never anybody voted against that. And it's really a model of sustained investment in a specific thing, and that has, improvements that are going to last for 100 years. So I'd like to see us kind of go for that. But now I'm going to keep it a little real, okay? One of the reasons we have a great pavement condition index is because we have measure M2. So a little bit of every dollar you spend in the County of Orange goes to transportation projects, and then we are one of the major beneficiaries of that. Our Public Works Department is outstanding and gets more than their fair share because they're so good at grants and backing things up and have such great credibility with the OCTA. They get more than their fair share of Measure M2 money. That's one of the reasons relative to our facilities and our parks, our streets are much nicer in Costa Mesa, and I want you to enjoy that as you go home tonight. But also keeping it real. So we don't have that level of funding for facilities, and that's why facilities have kind of been the stepchild, right? And then, of course, we have other areas of funding. You may have heard this term, or maybe you haven't, because you've been focusing on facilities. There's a thing we've been throwing around the last couple years, the Min money. David Min, who used to be our senator, state senator, is now our Congress member, and he gave us something in the order of $15 million to deal with certain parks projects, right? That's kind of a cool thing to do for a senator, now a congressman. Maybe that's one of the reasons he is a congressman, is because he aligned his values with the values of the people that get to go to parks. And nevertheless, even notwithstanding the investment that he put in, we are still going to get a parks assessment that's going to say we need to put more money into parks. You know, it's the gift that keeps on giving. With facilities, it's more challenging from a budgetary perspective because there's no M2 and they're not flashy. And with the exception of some of these projects like Balearic, the downtown center, the libraries, they're not public facing. So what you have is the last rung of the people who get the attention from a budgetary standpoint are employees. And sadly, as some of the council members pointed out, particularly Lauren, it's often the shortest end of the stick are public safety employees, are firefighters, which is just, whatever. But we have to be realistic about this in the sense that we're going to go into a budgetary cycle. We're going to have next week, we're going to have or a couple weeks, we're going to have our CIP study session. And, it's not getting any better in terms of the budget. We had issues in 2024, 25, issues in 25, 26, and I anticipate we're going to have issues in 26 and 27. And the baseline amount of money that we need to spend is on employees. We spend a tremendous amount of money on our employees through our collective bargaining agreement, and I've got no problem with that. We agreed to them, and we need our employees, and we value our employees. The next level is what's called maintenance of effort, which we have to put in order to get this M2 money to make our streets look so nice. And then that leaves a small amount of discretionary money left to spend on facilities and parks and so forth. So whereas we can say, okay, now we've received your information, and now we have seen the light, and we know that there's a lot of deferred maintenance in our facilities and in our parks. The fact of the matter is we do not work for the branch of the government that prints money, right? And so I agree with what Arliss said. It'd be wonderful to come up with ways to save money and generate revenue, but like if we do some type of swag store, you have to sell a lot of Costa Mesa hats to fix a roof, right? So I'm not sure, we can have a plan. We should have a plan. It's just the plan has to have some modicum of realism in terms of the budget, not just our budget this year, but our budget going forward. I see a lot of aspiration in this work that's being done. It's very aspirational. I appreciate it. I love to dream big, but you got to wake up from the dream at some point in time. And we got to pay for our employees, and we got to pay for our streets, and we do have a lot of deferred attention that's been done to our IT. We had an IT master plan. Who would have taken money out of that, right? It's very necessary, and we've done it over the last 5 years. So we have to make some tough choices. But what are we going to do? Are we going to have our pavement condition index go down? Are we going to see a few less employees around here? What are we going to do? Okay, those are the policy decisions we need to make. But we can't just say, hey, we're going to build all these buildings, and then we're going to commit the future councils to it. I think it has to be tinged with a bit of budgetary reality. That wasn't your assignment. That's our assignment, and I get it. See if I have any questions. It's not. really not my assignment either, because I only got one more budget to vote on, and then I'll be like Ralph Tabota, taking my 3 minutes and complaining to the next council. I don't want to ask that question. I already asked that question. I'm not going to ask that question. Okay, something to think about. Public-private partnerships, okay? So let me give you a perfect example of that. And of course, this would be, fraught with having to deal with a lot of details to make sure the separateness and so forth and so on. But when we talk about the Real Crime Center, which I think is an awesome idea, and by the way, Dave Min is coming through with money on that too. What if we were to see if we can co-host that at Anduril? What about different private places that are in our community that would be willing to sublease from us, retrofit for us, so we don't have to come up with all the capital? So I think we need to think about private-public partnerships on a lot of these facility deals. We have to be creative, or it just won't get done. Let's snap out of it. We don't have the money to do the things that are in this report. So let's try to be creative, and let's try to get as much of it done as we can. That's all my comments. Shall we adjourn? Okay, thank you.